Hello, hello, and welcome everyone. Thank you both so much for joining us live today. And for those that are joining in the audience live or those listening to the recording for a discussion. And this is a lead dev panel created in partnership with Harness. It'll last roughly 45 minutes, after which both myself and the panelists will head over to the lead dev Slack to answer more of your questions in the hashtag, I guess we say hashtag for it, panel Q&A channel. And to continue discussion, if you aren't already a Slack member yet, for those live, I'm just shooting you right now the Slack invitation. It's a wonderful community that it's just a way to continue discussion with engineering leadership. And also we welcome the voices, of course, of developers if they want to, add their thoughts as well, because we need to be listening to you, which will be part of the theme of today's and all conversations. For those of us joining us live, feel free to just share your questions in the Zoom and I will ask them. And then if we have extra questions, because we have a good community joining us today, it will continue in the Slack. So let's get started. I'm Jennifer Riggins. I'm a technology journalist, and today I'll be joined by Eric Maxwell, head of 10X Technology at Google, and Prashant Batra, or sometimes PB, Senior Director of Product Management at Harness. Prashant, can you please introduce yourself and what you're most excited to talk about today? You are on mute because
Had to happen, right?
had to happen.
So, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I am a senior director of product at Harness. I've been in the industry for 20 plus years. As you can imagine, over that time, I've built many different products from building my first VPN to gateways to mobile device management software to CASB, cloud access security brokers, to my last gig where I was at Nutanix, where we were building a hybrid cloud platform. And then sort of my 5 years at Harness that I've spent, I've built a few different things. Off late, what I do is I lead one of our product lines called Software Engineering Insights. And just as a quick sort of overview of what that means, right? So Software Engineering Insights is a product line from Harness that essentially aims to empower engineering leaders today with deep insights into how well are teams building software, how efficient are the processes you're running, how productive are teams, how well aligned is your execution to the outcomes that you're looking for, how well are you using AI, right? Everything begins with measurement, and then using those measured metrics to drive actions, drive transformation, recommend changes, right? And so that is what this product line does. And I'm really excited to sort of chat with Jennifer, Eric today, and talk about how we see the advent of AI in the industry and how modern day platforms like Harness, Software Engineering Insights, a lot that Eric is working on, are truly sort of participating in this transformation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Nice to have you. And Eric, can you please introduce yourself and then talk about your job title? Because kind of famously in the lead dev community, we do not love the term 10X engineer. So maybe talk about what 10X technology is as well at
Sure.
Google Food
Yeah,
Effects.
no problem. So I'll just give a little background. I started off my career as an engineer, and I spent most of my time doing back-end API engineering, mostly working in like the middle layer and the back end. Around 2010, 2011, I started really getting into automation. Not because I was trying to do DevOps, but I was one of three people at a startup company that became web scale. And so we just considered that survival rather than putting any, terms or tags around it. So I kind of got into the game early on. And then around 2015, I started working at Chef Software, and that's when I really started working with customers and helping them do all the things that I had already had like a 5 year jump start on, which was pretty cool. And that led me to Google. So I've been here at Google now for almost 8 years. I'm part of the DORA team. So I'm one of the researchers on DORA. and I'm also one of the authors of the reports that we put out. And then so what I wanted to do at Google was take the research that we do, because that really is, where my passion lies. I really enjoy that aspect of it. And I wanted to figure out how I could take that research and bring it to our customers. So thankfully, I had the opportunity to start a consulting practice on the Google Cloud consulting side, which we call 10x Technology, for better or worse. But so what we do specifically is we focus on bringing DORA research to our customers. So we focus on developer experience, how to increase productivity, how do you build engineering excellence. Of course, a big part of that is the cultural aspect. And then from a technology perspective, we focus on, DevOps, AI tooling, and of course, lots of platform engineering. So nice to be here. And to address the 10x part, 10x is something that we talk about quite famously inside of Google, actually. And so it's not really a mention about the engineer. It's more about how can you 10x a company through the use of technology.
That is a beautiful disclaimer and explanation. Yes, the 10x teams, the 10x organizations is totally feasible. Nobody really wants to work with someone that self-identifies as a 10x engineer. So absolutely.
No, no, not at all. So thank you for that clarification.
So for those that don't know, those in Europe know there's the DORA environmental regulations, completely different. DORA, Google is de-acronymized. Nathan Harvey has taught me that word. But it's this industry benchmarking annual survey that's facilitated by Google. It's most associated with its four metrics, which measure throughput and stability, but it's actually well over 100, 150 questions that allow organizations to see where they stand. As a technology journalist, this is one of those data sources I really look forward to every year. And I have a selfish plea that I ask you to fill out this anonymous survey when it comes around. This is really fascinating data, and it helps you understand and reflect on yourself. And we get this overarching benchmarking report. I've shared it in the chat for those live, and it's in the webinar resources link, so you can get this year's report. But Eric, can you offer a more official definition of what the DORA study is and how companies can use it?
Sure, yeah. So, just one item of clarification. As of this last year of research, 2025, it's now five metrics. So we added rework to the list, which is pretty cool. It was kind of a long time coming. We had been thinking about it and really researching it for 2 years. And then we finally added it to what we call our core model. So unfortunately, we haven't had the time to update the website, but all of that is coming soon. So we'll be adding that to the quick check on the website, and we'll be adding it to, all of the official documentation. But yeah, so I wonder if it would be helpful just to kind of show like the DORA capability diagram, and then I can kind of walk through that. Uh,
Absolutely, yeah. So let's share that so everyone understands.
So it looks like our corporate
Oh, this is something we were
access
having technical difficulties before.
will
So
not allow me to share my screen. So
that's totally
uh,
fine. If you
can
would like,
can you share Dora.dev?
absolutely, it would be my pleasure. Let me make sure I'm not having nefarious things open on my laptop. Here we go. So I'm going to Dora.dev and research,
Yep.
and then I'm going to share my screen. Thank you so much. Share screen.
Yeah, and if you want to just expand that capability model, and I can kind of
Yeah,
talk through it there.
you would like under
Uh,
the capabilities, right? But this is good.
if you
Those are
just
going to
on
learn
just
how
click
to
on
use.
research,
Okay,
just the top button there.
there we
Yep.
go.
And then scroll down and then click on the
So you
the
can
radio
do it.
button.
Which one?
The radio button at the top there where it
The
says detail.
radio is what I'm not.
Oh,
No,
sorry. So right above the word outcomes. There you go.
thank
Okay,
you.
cool. And then just kind of scroll down so we can see the whole model, or at least as much of it as possible.
What?
Cool. All right. So I'll just give a brief explanation. The metrics that were mentioned, the now five key metrics, those sit in the middle, the green box there under performance and under software delivery specifically. So that's how we measure software delivery. So these metrics are globally recognized as the industry standard way of measuring software delivery performance. And in fact, there are the last time I counted, which admittedly was maybe 5 or 6 months ago, there were 60 third-party tools that surface these metrics for their users. So just kind of adding to, the giving credence to what I said about being kind of industry accepted metrics and ways of measuring. Now, the interesting thing is the metrics have definitely been the thing that have maybe, how do I say this, gotten a lot of attention. And so as a result, a lot of people think that the metrics are synonymous with DORA. So when they think DORA, they think metrics. I personally think that the metrics are actually the least interesting part of the whole DORA research and the framework and whatnot. And I'll kind of explain why I think that. So what our research really focuses on is the blue box on the right-hand side, the outcomes. Because let's face it, this is what everybody cares about, right? All organizations care about the organizational performance. So whatever the organization is trying to achieve, that's what the organization cares about, right? I mean, that's why the organization deploys AI and, does DevOps and builds platforms and, everything else that an organization does, they do it to achieve their goals. And also, they want to improve the well-being of the people that work there. At least most companies do. So this is where we start our research. We start with the outcomes. And then so what we do is we ask the question, okay, what are the things that will predict higher levels of these outcomes that we care about? And our research has shown that software delivery performance and reliability are two very strong predictors of these outcomes that we care about. So, and that's where we get the metrics because, if we agree that these things are important and that they drive the outcomes, well, we need a way to measure these things, obviously. And so that's how we came up with the DORA metrics. So, but that's not where the research stops. And that's where I think a lot of people actually think that, the research stops. It keeps going. And so what we want to do is we want to understand what are the things that organizations can do that will predict higher levels of software delivery performance and higher levels of reliability. And so when we think about the metrics, I would encourage folks to think about the metrics as just a gauge. They're just lagging indicators that tell you if you're heading in the right direction. And the things that you really want to focus on are the capabilities on the left-hand side. And the way that you do this first is obviously by understanding what the capabilities are and understanding, what do we mean when we say continuous integration, as an example. We want to make sure that we're all sort of talking the same language. I've worked with a lot of customers where, you're saying the same words, but you mean pretty different things, right? So first let's ground on that, look at what we mean by those capabilities, and then you want to prioritize at the application or service level where your strengths and weaknesses in these capabilities lie. So you need to have like a real truthful introspection about, where are the bottlenecks in the process? And once you've identified the bottlenecks, you can then prioritize them and then start improving them. So the bulk of our research really is on these capabilities here that you see on the left-hand side. So I hope that gives a good overview for folks.
Absolutely. So, in the context of this year's report, which was renamed, which is something unto itself, I think we could say is different. It's called the State of AI Assisted Software Development, because that's where we are. What's changed? What is different right now? What have we learned? Because this year I think, feels like a turning point for the tech industry and for the DORA report, no?
Yeah, definitely. I think it kind of follows along the theme of the de-acronyming that we did 2 years ago for the 10-year anniversary. And the reason that we did that is because we felt that folks were getting too hung up on the term DevOps. And, those of us that have been in the industry, when we say the word DevOps, we understand what that means. We understand that it is, a cultural and a process and an organizational transformation. But a lot of people conflate that with technology. And when you're trying to have these conversations with people who are not technologists, a lot of times they just kind of shut down, when they hear trigger words, if you will, and then DevOps is kind of one of them, where we would have these conversations and I would use the word DevOps and they would say, okay, well, our pipelines are fine. We don't want to focus on our pipelines. We want to focus on delivering code faster. You're like, yes, that's what I'm talking about. So anyway, so we made the decision then to de-acronym, and also then as part of that, the name of the report was the State of DevOps Report. So it just seemed natural that we evolved that, remove DevOps from the title, and really start focusing on, as you mentioned, the changing landscape that we see in the industry today.
Okay, and not just a title. What is different this year? What has changed? Because last year it was kind of like, well, AI has assisted the quality of docs quite a bit,
Yeah.
but it's kind of made things less stable. So what is the unique about the one that came out in November
Yeah,
report?
well, I mean, obviously there's a major focus on AI in the entirety of the report. So not only did we expand the research that we started 2 years prior, um, and really started digging into AI at a much deeper level. And by the way, just to kind of back up for a second, for those of people that haven't really been following our research, the what we do is we study something, in a given year, and when we discover something that's interesting, exciting, something that we want to understand more, we continue to explore those topics and just go deeper and deeper and deeper. So this is the third year of that AI pursuit. And it was really apparent to us that this was something that we needed to go all in on because the industry is going all in on this. And it really has changed the paradigm for what's happening at um, you know, at the entire organization from idea to implementation. And so we wanted to get a deeper understanding of, how is AI affecting developers in their day-to-day? What are things that developers are using? How are they using these things? What impacts is AI having? And one of the impacts that we did discover, again, was that it is increasing the instability, which is not a good thing, and also increasing rework. So we did see that. And then another major change or major thing that we added to the report this year is we create so that capability guide, or map rather, that you were just displaying on the screen. We expanded that and we created an AI capability model. So what we wanted to understand, so what we talked about just a minute ago is the capabilities that will drive software delivery performance. What we wanted to understand was when you have AI, what are the capabilities that you can focus on to drive specific outcomes that you're looking for? So there we go. So what this does is this allows you to start from the right-hand side. We always start from the right-hand side and work our way to the left. And so you can look at this map and say, okay, I want to improve, my team performance as an example. So you can hover over team performance, and what it does is it will tell you and highlight the capabilities that you need to focus on when you're working with AI. And so those capabilities will amplify the impact of AI on those outcomes that you care about. Now, it's really important to understand that when I say the word amplify, this is a bi-directional pathway. So it doesn't just make things better, it also makes things worse. And let me explain. If you are doing things well, AI makes those things better. If you are doing things not very well, AI makes things worse. So this team performance is a really great example. When you dig into our research, what it shows is that teams that are user-centric, AI then makes the team performance better. Teams that are not user-centric, AI introduction into the team makes team performance measurably worse, substantially worse. So I think that's really important to understand is this amplification goes both ways. So anyway, so we created this model to help people focus on the outcomes that they're looking for and really try to dissect and understand, you know, perhaps why aren't we getting the results that we expected? Like code quality, as an example, is a big one that customers, frequently, I frequently hear from people, hey, these tools are great, they're helping us write code quickly, but a lot of times the quality just isn't there. Well, what our research shows is that in order to get high levels of code quality, you need to have internal data that is accessible to your AI tools. So, if you're using Code Assist, they need to be trained on your internal repos in order to really produce good quality code, as an example.
And as you can see, it doesn't just affect code quality, it affects individual effectiveness, it affects product performance, which
Hmm.
makes sense because we've always known garbage in, garbage out with data, right? Maybe
That's
not
right. Yep. And so if you're interested in this,
garbage, but something trained on the world is not trained on your code. These are different. And
that's
you're
right. Yeah, that's very correct. And then lastly, what I'll say about this is we've also been, from a DORA research perspective, we've been trying to put out more content and give more to the community. And so we actually just recently released an entire report on this model. And so that's the AI capabilities model that you see there on the left-hand side. It is almost 100 pages that goes very in depth into each of those capabilities and the outcomes that they drive. Shows all of the research, all of the data, and so that's a really great place to go if you want to learn more about this model.
not. And everything we're talking about is not just this model and these things, but what it actually is in reality. So, Prashant, with that in mind, like, how does this ring true compared with like because Harness is a company that uses AI, you are still a technology company, and what your organization has experienced and what you find your clients are going through.
Yeah. Loved the overview, Eric. I think DORA has been the golden standard for the industry for a while, right? For any leader, as we have gone into a services architecture, if you are the owner of a service and you're responsible for the uptime, the health of these services, one of the key measures of this is, as you own the teams that build these services, maintain these services, are the DORA metrics, right? So, and AI sort of is a big event that's happening in the industry. Um, and there are many ways to measure AI, many ways to understand AI, but DORA continues to be one of those golden metrics that absolutely continues to matter, right? Because at the end of the day, AI or not, you are measuring software delivery, and that's what DORA helps you measure, right? So I think from my perspective, I spend a lot of time talking to a lot of our customers who are um, on the hook in so many ways, right? If you imagine being a SVP of engineering, a CIO, a CTO today, there is tremendous pressure on us as leaders to truly basically embrace AI and show results, show ROI, right? Money is no longer cheap. Over the last many years, money has become expensive, right? Everything must be proven. The ROI must be shown, right? And AI is such a transformational technology right now that everybody is expecting magic to happen, but that magic needs to be proven. It needs to be shown by hard numbers, right? So every leader today is saying, look, I am making investments, not enabling my teams with the best in breed AI tooling is not an option. Some teams are signing up for one vendor. Most customers that I talk to have an open vendor policy. It does not mean anybody can bring anything, but it means that as a best practice, they want to enable more and more coding assistance for their users, see what their developers love within sort of an enterprise contract with the right guardrails and so on and so forth, right? And as these investments begin to happen, the obvious question now for the that engineering leaders have to answer back to the board, back to the CFO, is like, we made all these investments. What is the ROI? What tool is worth investing more in? What tool is truly providing us value, and so on and so forth, right? And so it comes down to measuring what tools developers are using. It comes down to measuring with the tools that these developers are using, what impact are you actually seeing in your SDLC? There is obviously a very easy perception. Everybody feels more productive, right? All of a sudden, you can prompt and code is written for you, right? And test cases are written for you and documentation can be generated. That is a massively powerful thing to happen. So there is an obvious perception that my productivity has significantly enhanced. And yet, as an organization, to everything that Eric was mentioning, um, it is not necessary that if everybody begins to use tool on their own, that as an organization you're actually thriving and you are moving towards becoming that 10x organization. That is not guaranteed, right? So, as leaders, again, you want to begin to measure, you want to begin to understand that as an organization, not as an individual, not as one team, but as an organization, how well have we embraced AI? What is the impact I'm seeing? What is the positive impact? But sometimes what is the negative impact? Or sometimes what is flatline where I expected obvious gains, but I'm not seeing those gains. So you want to begin to measure. So I think Eric said something where metrics are laggard indicators and might be very less interesting as compared to the actual capabilities you want to develop. But guess what, right? Unless until you have those gauges that tell you where is the slowdown, where is that you should focus on, you don't know what capability to start improving as an organization. So installing that gauge becomes sort of that first step you take, begin to measure things. That opens your mind, that gives you eyesight into what are the different bottlenecks you're observing, especially again as you invest in AI. Like I'll give a very crude example, and DORA research also speaks to this, is right. What AI is doing is that it's generating tons of code, right? It's so easy to write code now. Every engineer is creating more and more and more code. But that more code is leading to, first of all, review bottlenecks. If you have not, as an organization, considered what does it mean to review this massive amount of code that is being generated now and rethink your review processes, there is a review bottleneck. If the quality of the code, for whatever reasons, because you didn't train your models well enough, because you've not enabled your engineers well enough, if the quality of that code is not great, it's leading to a lot of rework. You have a rework bottleneck, right? So being able to identify these things and then finding the capabilities you have to invest in is the way I see sort of the industry, truly sort of panning on this.
Actually, when those that are watching this have gone through the process of signing up for a lead dev webinar, and there's quite an open-ended question about like what you hope to get out of joining this conversation. And the most common response was, to summarize it, because everyone writes their own ideas, was people were looking for effective, measurable ways to boost productivity or to increase engineering efficiency for technical teams. So this does come down to the metrics. So, I mean, I definitely hope people fill out DORA sometimes, once a year at least, maybe more, but it is not a quick survey by any means. It is quite detailed and thorough and important in itself. But what are, especially when we have this whole idea of empowering developers with autonomy, but then this creates this whole AI sprawl and maybe shadow AI, because we know if you try to ban something that they want to use, it's not that expensive. They'll just take out their credit cards. Maybe we need to control that. So how can you measure the AI adoption, where the bottlenecks are, and the impact on your developers? What are some of the key metrics?
Is that a question for me, Jennifer?
For either of you, yeah. What have you been finding that is some powerful metrics either for your team or your customers?
Yeah, I can take a first crack, Eric, and then you can add to that.
Sure.
Yeah, please.
So I think, the first thing, like, what does it mean to measure AI, right? There are two broad categories. What is the adoption of these tools, and then what is the impact of those tools? And we'll come to both, right? So to measure adoption of these tools, obviously you want to start looking into saying, how many users are using these tools? What kinds of tools? But then using this tool does not guarantee that you're actually using it, right? Just having a license and once in a while prompting something in the tool does not mean you're effectively using the tool. So then you have to go within these tools and begin to understand how much of the code that you're actually committing to your repositories is actually coming from these AI assistants, right? Interestingly, that is a hard problem to solve today. The state
Yeah,
of the
how do you measure that? Like,
the state
are
of
you just asking developers, or are you using tools to measure the percentage of code that AI was involved, because maybe developers don't feel safe saying whether or not they're using AI or not. Side note, they are, but
I think
They are.
fortunately, every coding assistant on the market today exposes data as well as APIs for customers to gather insights for per user, per team, per organization. How much prompting are users doing? How many lines of code is an agent generating? How much of that code being generated is being accepted by the users and actually becoming part of their code, right? So there's a lot of data that these assistants provide. That, for example, a tool like SEI, we talk to a Claude Code, we talk to a Windsurf, a Cursor, a Gemini Code. It says like different tools and pull in this data, so that provides that common visibility of adoption and usage of these tools to our customers. Um, but the hard part is once that data is accepted, right? Let's say I prompted Windsurf and Windsurf generated code and I accepted that code. There is no way to guarantee that that code was then not modified or lines of code were not deleted by the developers, right? And that's where there is a little bit of a flux in the industry today, where truly measuring, truly tagging every line of code. Like imagine if Git had a metadata for every line of code which said this was purely AI generated versus this was AI generated and then edit versus some of the code that was only manually created. So that level of sort of instrumentation for code does not exist today, but I have no doubt that we are all heading towards that if we have to deeply measure this. So that's just the measurement of adoption and usage, and then there is the impact part. And if you really think of impact part, what you want to measure is obviously like why am I using? Because I want to be faster. I want to be generating more code. What is the improvement in your code velocity? Is the first thing you want to measure, and this is expected to be typically very positive gains, right? But velocity often can come
code
at the cost.
velocity. Velocity at what point
The
in the
you
software
could look
delivery
at
pipeline?
Yeah, you could look at velocity at a granular level in terms of the PRs that developers are generating. Am I creating a lot more PRs than I used to? Am I writing a lot more lines of code than I used to? But more importantly, from a business perspective, am I actually resolving more bugs and am I delivering more features and capabilities in the product? Right? Has the level of features that I was delivering, has that actually improved? So that is feature velocity, PR velocity, bug velocity that tools like SEI help you measure. But to complete that point, Jennifer, I think velocity can often come at the cost of quality, right? Especially in the age of AI. If you're not reviewing this code very well, then often the number of bugs coming is high. But also, like Eric mentioned, it might be leading to a lot of rework. How do you measure the rework that is being created because of all this, AI code that is coming in? And then finally, it's not just quality of the code now, but it's the long-term maintainability of the code. It's AI is many times not explainable. A lot of times the code that is written, if a year later developers had to go fix things and AI was not fixing it, chances are you might not understand what's in there. What is the long-term maintainability of this code? What is the quality of this code, right? So there are many ways to sort of think about this problem that leaders today are looking to measure, and that's where again tools like SEI, Software Engineering Insights, come in and try to provide those insights.
Okay. What,
So,
yeah,
can I
what other,
respond to that one? I have some thoughts on this, and I'll start by summoning one of my favorite South Park episodes, the Underpants Gnomes, if you all remember that, where it was like step one, collect underpants, step three, profit. So I think a lot of customers and organizations treat AI in a very similar way, where they think step one, adopt AI tools, step three, profit. The problem is that there's a middle part. So there's adopting the tool, and then you have to build trust in the tool with the developers. And only until you have built trust will you then start to see developer productivity. And there's some additional nuance here because the way that you measure adoption is going to be different than the way that you measure trust, both from a metrics perspective and also at the level at which you measure it. So most of these will be at the individual level. So when you're adopting the tool, you want to see, are people using the tool? Are they using the licenses? Are they firing it up? Yada yada. When you get into trust, you need to understand, things like the percentage of code committed, lines of code committed from AI to see whether they are actually having trust in the tool. This process can take between a month to 2 months to actually build trust in these systems. And only after you've done that are you going to be able to reach developer productivity. Developer productivity, though, is now measured at the team or the application
Yeah,
level.
I was gonna say developers tend to really not like, well, probably any human being to be monitored and measured at any
Right.
individual level, especially in a less secure job market.
Yep. And it's just not helpful, right? It doesn't really actually tell you anything that's important. It gives you data, but does the data matter? And I would argue very strongly that it doesn't. So in addition to all of the things that Prashant mentioned around velocity and ticket closures, you can also use DORA metrics as a measure of productivity. But of course, again, that's at the application or service level. But that brings us into a new and interesting situation because a lot of companies are adopting AI, they're building trust in AI, but they're not getting productivity out of AI. And a lot of times when you zoom in and you really try to get an understanding of why that is, what I'm seeing is that companies are investing what seems like over 100% of all of their time, resources, and effort into AI adoption, but they're not continuing to focus on the fundamentals of the underlying platforms and the underlying pipelines. And like Prashant mentioned, you're now producing a lot more code, and a lot of times it's code that you don't even fully understand. But yet, companies haven't spent the time to improve their testing automation, their documentation quality, their continuous integration. And so now what you have these systems that are fragile and already not doing well. I mean, I don't know about you, Prashant, but I've literally never worked with a customer in the last 10 years when I ask them the question, is your testing automation great? None of them say yes,
And now
right?
there's more code to test.
Now there's more, and we're not even talking about agents yet, right?
Yeah.
We're just talking about code assist tools for the most part. When you start getting into agents, now it's like one developer to, how many developers is an agent? It could almost be an infinite amount. And so unless you have these underlying fundamentals in place, and really one of the keys to this is that, and this is shown in our research from last year, is the internal developer platform is the key to unlocking organizational performance with AI. So you can get, and Prashant was talking about this earlier, you can get individual performance, you can get team performance, but to really get organizational performance, you need a well-built internal developer platform. And most people that I interact with, they have internal developer platforms, but almost none of them have well-built and properly built internal developer platforms. So I definitely see that as something that is a friction point now, and it's just going to get exponentially worse the more that organizations adopt agents to do the bulk of the work.
Absolutely. And for those that are joining us live, I've enacted a poll, if that's the verb, which best describes where your organization is on the platform engineering journey. And we've got well, hopefully, well, we did, but then our budgets were cut. And then following the Cloud Native Computing Foundation's platform maturity model, we've got, so please do answer if you want. We're talking about provisional, which is custom processes by request ad hoc, totally appropriate in a startup setting where you've got less than 50 engineers, you still have that close context and all totally fine. Then we've maybe got the operational, maybe you start to standardize tooling, centrally tracked by a dedicated team. Then maybe you have reached the level of scalability with the platform as a product. You're treating your internal developers like customers. You have the self-service mechanism. So because you can't have a platform team scale to the amount of developers you have insights, metrics. We clearly like metrics on the call. And then the end goal of your golden path, your is to have reach this level of optimization where you're balancing both qualitative and quantitative metrics. You have integrated managed services, enabled ecosystem, and then you still have that like platform as a product, which might be even having internal marketing or demo days, things like that. So while we see where our audience is on that, I would recommend making it wide, and I wrote long responses. Prashant, so how are you finding as a platform company, and you're not the only one by any means, and there is this idea that maybe you start out by building a little something or a wiki to start, but as it evolves, can you offer some use cases of how like we're really finding platform engineering as a conduit of AI? So
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the taglines we use at Harness is that Harness is AI for everything after code, right? If you really think about SDLC, it's almost funny to think about the fact that, developers today are spending 30 to 40% of their time actually developing code, designing things, writing specs, actually writing code in Git, and working on the truly thing that sort of gets them excited and gets their juices flowing. And fortunately, unfortunately, 60 to 70% of our time as developers today goes into so much of the software delivery aspect that is just necessary friction to deliver software. It is building of my software. It is running, a battery of different kinds of test suites. It is, making sure my software is secure, running code vulnerability scans, running container scans, running cloud scans, running API scans. It's about then being able to deploy this thing, being able to handle deployment failures. It's about managing cloud costs. A huge part of today's engineering organizations is that every time I deploy, I update a new feature, it has incrementally led to significant more cloud costs that we are incurring.
and AI
And
more, we would
yeah,
assume.
and you need governance, you need controls to sort of cap that in some capacity, because the easiest thing for anybody to do is to make sure my service is healthy. I'm going to spin up 50 instances of this container, sure, but now you're burning money, right? So how do you sort of so a platform essentially allows you to manage all these different parts of SDLC. It's so much more than just writing code, right? And Harness, for example, today has introduced AI into every aspect of this delivery lifecycle, right? So we have a DevOps agent as an example that helps you build better pipelines, debug those pipelines, create pipelines automatically for the code that you want to deploy. We have a DevSecOps agent that automatically, for every service that you're deploying, goes to the code, runs the different scans, identifies vulnerabilities. But then, because, well, AI is now actually creating PRs to fix those vulnerabilities, right? So how do you bring in that level of automation where automatically you discover vulnerabilities, but then you automatically fix those vulnerabilities? We have a cloud cost agent that is constantly left shifting the notion of cost. Every time you're building something new, how do you left shift a construct of cost and be able to provide early indicators to say that here are some improvements you can make to better control the cost you're running? We have a SRE agent that is part of SDLC now, that every time you deploy something, it is constantly looking at the service that you've deployed, the uptime. It is looking for signatures. How healthy is the service looking? If it's not, automatically create incidents, automatically diagnose, RCA those incidents, right? So there is just so much you can do as a platform, right? I think to bring this home, one thing that I want to call out is the real power of platforms is that it has context to every in your organization. For you as an account, it understands everything you built, everything you deployed, every feature flag you changed, every metric that you're measuring, every incident that happened, every cloud cost action that you're taking. When you have this holistic view into every action you take as part of your SDLC, the way AI can truly understand and now begin to become your mentor, begin to make recommendations, begin to optimize all of this, is just so much more immensely powerful than individual tools you might bring in, right? And that is where platforms really begin to shine, because it has a true semantic understanding of everything you do from an SDLC standpoint.
That's such an amazing point that I have also been really trying to pound the table around. And I refer to the IDP or the platform as the center of the universe for everything that's happening in the organization, because you have the documentation, you have all of the previous things that have been tried and that have worked and maybe not worked. You have all of the engineering metrics. You have all of the code, all of the documentation, the service catalog, all of the golden paths. I mean, it's wild, and having that context allows you to do so much more in a fully automated way.
Mhm.
Very well.
Absolutely. And with the searchable context as well, which I think is very important. People, and especially developers, maybe don't want to ask people the first time they want to do something. They do want to be self-service so that, especially if they're new to an organization, so that when they're asking a question, it's an important one, not a who owns that or how do I find this? Because guess what? It's frustration is and finding things is like 20% of a developer's day. And I assume anyone joining a company, not just someone in a technical role. So for those that are on this call, the platform journey is really all over the place. I would say we've definitely have a varying amount of people, and on this platform journey, I wish you luck because I think we've found very clearly with this year's DORA report, it is the best way and the most successful way. These two trends have converged, and it's the way to deliver AI now. And then good luck on your journey. We will continue this conversation in Slack. And thank you so much to our active listeners and those listening afterwards. And especially thank you so much to Prashant and Eric. Good luck on your what is a journey, not a destination with AI. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.